The good news that I share with you today is that life without God is vanity. Life without God is vanity. Therefore, our prayers today will be for the grace to lay the foundations of our lives in God. Now, we can say without fear of contradiction that every life aspires for something. Something it thinks makes it better. This aspiration could be more pronounced in some people than others. And these aspirations could be for wealth, could be for honor, could be for academic excellence, could be for material success, and many others. Although these quests, these aspirations can be the springboard for fame or for notoriety, yet to accomplish them, one gives it his or her best. One gives it his or her all. Why? Because the person thinks that that is, as it were, the treasure trove of his heart. What he seeks, what his heart seeks to bring about some spillover effects in all ramifications of his or her life. That's the thinking. Once I have it, every other thing now flows. Every other thing now falls in place. And as Jesus told us in the gospel according to Matthew chapter 6, verse 21, where once treasure is, there one's heart is. So when one looks at any of these aspiration, whether it be wealth or honor or material success or academic excellence or what have you, when one considers these as the treasure, one's heart will be rooted in those words and one's drive will be to accomplish those things. But thinking about it and reflecting from what Jesus had said, the church today reminds us as believers that any of our quests that does not have God at its foundation, any of our quest that does not have God as its springboard, is vanity, is a chase after the wind. Why? Because it's not going to yield for us any treasure. Its spillover effects in our lives will be nothing if it is not rooted in God, if God is not the foundation. Now, I know some people will care less about what I have just said now because they think they're enjoying themselves here and now. I know some people will think that what I'm just saying now is false because for them they think that whatever I call as the afterlife will be a continuation of this life. So that if they have money now, they're going to have money in the next life. If they are living a good life now, they're going to live a good life in the hereafter. The thing is a continuation. You, my friends, you, the Christian, of course, you know it's not always that. Because Jesus already told us something about that rich man and Lazarus. The rich man had everything he wanted in this world. And Lazarus was that poor beggar sitting at his gate. But at the end of their lives, you know, their fortunes were different. So, next life is not a continuation of this life. What happens is that this life is a preparation for the next life, depending on how we put it into practice. So if you are one who thinks that all I have said about the fact that if we don't make God the foundation of our lives, that we are chasing after the wind, if you don't believe that, you, my friend, as a believer, the church invites you today to have a rethink, lest you spend your life in vanity. Please don't be deceived that the glamours you have now is going to continue. Do not believe and allow yourself to be deceived. No, it's not the same. It's not a continuation. And so, if you doubt this, why don't you take a look and ask? Some of the people who think are having the best of life, who are living in that splendor and glory that we perceive every day. I bet you many of them do not have a good night's sleep because they have those wealth, they have those fame, and every night they are worried about how to preserve those wealth so that they don't lose that wealth. They are thinking about how the stock market will not crash and everything is lost. They're thinking about their children who are growing, maybe useless in drug, in addiction, in prostitution, and the rest of them, bringing bad name to them, bringing bad image to them. They're thinking about different things and they don't go to bed and have a decent sleep. They are sick, their blood pressures rise every day. Yes, the glamour outside is there, but inside of them is rotten. There's no foundation. Whereas the ordinary poor person sleeps, wakes up happy. So it's not a measure. Materiality and its glamour and glory is not a measure of joy and happiness. And it's not going to be the measure and happiness for the tomorrow because it's not a continuation. Moreover, have you seen anyone who dies and is buried in his limousine? Have you seen anyone who dies and is buried with his castle? Have you seen anybody who dies and is buried with his boyfriend or girlfriend? It doesn't happen. If you touch the girlfriend at that moment, who is crying, thinking the world is collapsed, and you say, could you jump in so that we can put the earth over you with the guy? Of course, you will run away. So we have to have a real rethink. It was this that shaped Jesus' answer to that young man who wanted him to intervene in the sharing of his father's estate. Now, Jesus' answer to that young man who made me the adjudicator of your problem, of your estate, was not because he cared less about the concern of this young man. Jesus' answer was not because he cared less about the injustice the older brother was trying to perpetrate against the young man. Jesus' response was because he discovered that the two brothers were distracted by the same spirit of greed. The older brother had imagined that if he had everything to himself, he would be better off. The younger brother imagined that if he got his own share, he would be better off. True as those things may be externally and materially, but there's something lacking in those judgments. What is it? They forgot that even if they got all those things, if they don't have life, if they don't live, you can't enjoy those things. So, because of that, Jesus, as it were, was answering that young man to do what? Seek the first things first. Put your priorities aright. What is the first thing? What is the most important thing? What is the primary thing? It's not a greed of what property you get. It's not a greed of what property you acquire over and above every other person. You and I, as believers, knows that the primary thing is life. You and I, as believers, know this. The first thing is life. You know, people from the culture where I was born, we have a name that is called Ndobu Isi. What does that mean? Life is first. We also have this saying in our language, my native language, that anazota chala tupu azobute. That you first of all secure the ground before you start securing the mattress. Because if you get the mattress and you don't have the land, you're not going to put the mattress on the air. So there's something that comes first. That is life. And who is the author of this life? You and I, as believers, know that the author of this life is God. So, because life is first and the author of life is God, we as believers are encouraged from these scripture readings to know how to begin our quest with God and making God the foundation of all we do. And if we fail to seek God first and make God the foundation of all we do, we are unfortunately on the race for vanity. And we are unfortunately chasing after the wind. This was the basis of today's gospel parable of the rich man that is called the rich fool. It is good to note that he was not called a fool because he worked so hard. No, he's not called a fool because he had a bumper harvest. No, he's not considered a fool because he imagined that with the greater harvest he needed to expand his plan. No, none of these were reasons why he was called a rich fool. He was called the rich fool because he had imagined that he is now in control of his life. When he said, I will say to my soul, rejoice and be glad. You have everything that you need the rest of your life. He now thought it's within him. He is in charge. He refused to acknowledge. He refused to begin his celebration with thanksgiving to the author of his life, with thanksgiving to the author of his strength, with thanksgiving to the author of the bumper harvest. St. Paul reminds us in his first letter to the Corinthians, chapter 4, verse 7, about what is it that we have that is not given to us. Life was a gift from God. Strength to work was a gift from God. The bumper harvest is a gift from God, because St. Paul equally reminds us that what? Somebody does the planting, somebody does the watering, but it's only God who grants the growth. So this man put everything in himself instead of beginning with God, continuing in God, and putting God as the first of his celebration, of the first in his thanksgiving. And that was why he was called a rich fool. And he heard that word that said to him, "Oh, rich fool, this night your life will be taken away from you, and all these things, whose will it be?" My dear friends, this is the problem of our society. We began the American story with that motto that in God we trust. That's how we began the American story. And we saw the success of our American story. But instead of now continuing in that foundation of God as the architect of the American story, what has happened? We started to kick God out of our lives and out of our society. We started to redefine life to suit our fantasies. We continued to care less about the order God placed in nature and in creation. We began to exploit and abuse other people, forgetting that each life has a dignity, whether it's white or black, brown or anything, that each life has a dignity, and God loves each person and God desires heaven for each person. We lost it. We forgot. Because our people had imagined, and as they compose, that we have the Purple Mountain's majesty. We began to think, because we are located from sea to shining sea, that everything is now ours to be, to define. We forgot. And I recall a little piece I put in Pueblo Chieftain in 2015. Drawing from that word from the second book of the Maccabees, where we said that the Lord, however, had not chosen the people because of the place, but the place for the sake of the people. It is not because we have the purple mountain majesty. It's not because we live from sea to shining sea that we are the blessed of people. It's not the land. Blessing comes to the land because of the people. So when we kick God out of our system, when we kick God out and begin to redefine things in our own fantasies, we are losing it. We're no longer sustaining the foundation on which we are built. And what has that given to us? The results are pain. The results are violence. The results are fear. The results are the discomfort that we experience everywhere. The results are all vanities because these are nothingness that have spillover effects that give us eternal dividends. They lead us nowhere. So what's our remedy? Our remedy, as St. Paul tells us in our second reading today, is refocus to where Christ is, the leader of our salvation. He's in heaven. Refocus to heaven and follow the path that will lead us to heaven. Refocus to the author of our life. Refocus and make our lives have its foundation in God. Our toils and struggles has its foundation in God. Our work has its foundation in God. Our hope has its foundation in God. Once we do that, my friends, we will no longer be on the race of vanity. We will no longer be on the race that will lead us to nothing. Because as he said, vanity of vanity, all will be vanity. But if we put God as the foundation and make God the beginning and the architect of everything, the perfecter of everything, we will smile. We will be joyful. Why? Because the spillover effect, the dividend, will be heaven for us, joy for us, because God is in charge. God has conquered and God has a plan. So, my dear friends, remember, as I said, our good news today is with God, we are on the progress. But without God, it will be vanity. So make your choice. Do you want to spend your life for nothing? Or do you want to spend your life for eternal goodness and glory? If you want it for nothing, continue on the path of vanity. But if you want it to yield for you something good, then make God the foundation of your life, the continuation of your life, the perfecter and finisher of your life, and you will experience his eternal blessedness. Peace be with you.